couple sentences that you think all of your bipartisan colleagues would say that we could pretty much understand? Because I think that would be a great way to frame the first part of what is the threat.
It is so fragmented today. And you've got, I think, bin Laden, who I think initially believed that, he could actually collapse America like he collapsed the Soviet Union after Afghanistan, that we would disintegrate. I think that now you take a look at some of the elements of Al-Qaeda would say, our impact, our desire is to create as much economic uncertainty in the United States and cause them as much economic pain as possible, which bin Laden also talked about. In some of those ways, you can take a look at, they have inflicted tremendous economic pain. I talked to a group of students earlier today, and you take a look at, I fly every week, going through TSA. I mean, what an absolutely miserable experience, okay? And tremendous cost. You take a look at what we've done to protect critical infrastructure, whether it's in the private and the public structure, private or public sector. Tremendous cost. The amount of money that we have invested and spent in Iraq and Afghanistan. A tremendous amount of cost. I think ultimately they'd like to see us collapse, and until that point, it is continue to inflict as much pain, and from their standpoint, that would be economic costs in America to make, to diminish our role and our effectiveness in the world today.
I was wondering, do you think the economy has played a factor in the government deciding what their stance is on foreign affairs? Obviously, people are losing their homes and their jobs, and is that kind of taking precedent to our threats against America?
Yeah, I think it always has. It's one of the reasons that the first point I tried to make is that, it's a plea to America to think about more than just itself. Okay, if we're going to be a global leader, we need all of you engaged in the dialogue about what that means. That foreign policy is important. If you go to Capitol Hill, and one of the first things that you do on Capitol Hill when you get there is you start lobbying for, jockeying for position on committees. Intel's kind of unique because we get some special insights. Foreign affairs, foreign policy, anything like that, people flee from unless they've got some background in it, because you know what, it doesn't do anything for me back home. Because people back home don't care about foreign policy. And so what you have is, you've got Congress, you've got much of Congress that is focused on, where we're going to build a bridge, what road is going to get paved, and these kinds of things back home in their district, when really the fundamental role of the federal government is what? To provide for the national security and defense of the country. You would want to have 435 members of the House and 100 members of the Senate who understand international policy so that they can provide for the common defense, and they can also understand the dynamics of trade so that we can not only be strong, militarily, appropriately, but we can also be strong economically. In reality, when people come home and they're assigned to committees or they've developed a role in foreign affairs, a lot of times the voters punish them for it because it's kind of like, you didn't take care of me back home. Some of us would argue that taking care of me back home is more a function of the state government and local government rather than the federal government. That's how the founding fathers envisioned it.
Emerging economic strength, more so than Al-Qaeda's terrorism. Can you comment on our relationship with China?
Yeah, I use this term, China clearly is a threat. Okay, it's an economic threat. They're developing a military capability. Last year at this time, I traveled through the countries that border on the South China Sea, and China is being very, very aggressive and exerting quote unquote, its sovereign rights to huge swatches of that part of the world, that the people in that part of the world are saying, you can't do that. And it's kind of like their response is, stop us. And, you know, you've got countries there that have, you know, they have no air force, they've got a few speedboats for their navy, and these kinds of things. And so, yeah, the expansionist threat. In terms of trade, from my perspective, it's very clear. China cheats. Okay? I mean, you know, they use prison labor. They steal intellectual property. You know, I've got, you know, in Michigan, we've got a lot of high-tech companies. The question that I ask high-tech companies is, have you guys detected any penetration or attempted penetration of your databases by outside forces? And if they say no, I tell them, okay, your security's not good enough. Because I'm confident that the Chinese are trying to get in. They do it on Capitol Hill every day. They do it at the Pentagon every day. Thousands of attempts to try to get into our secure data networks to either get information for intelligence purposes or in the private sector to go in and steal trade secrets, to steal technology from us. I mean, when after the Bin Laden raid, our helicopter goes down, who are the first people that have access to see it after the Pakistanis? The Chinese. Okay? Why? They want the technology and they will rip it off. And no, I think that we've got to have, this is why we've got, you know, this is another part of this whole, this is why foreign policy matters. Why we have to have an understanding and a discussion about what China means. Okay? Some people see them as, you know, a terrible force. Others see them as just a huge market opportunity. But let's, you know, we can have a discussion about this. We can have a dialogue, a civil dialogue. We can point out what they do on stealing trade. We can talk about what they do with slave labor. We can talk about their trade policies, where it's kind of like if you want to sell in China, you need to make in China, versus us, where it's kind of, you can make it over there and sell it over here, no problem. You know, and we ought to have that discussion. But no, clearly they're a threat.
Or a better way to put it is, what should we be emphasizing to help people better understand that what goes on with foreign policy or just U.S. political issues in general directly can affect who we are or our lifestyle as an American citizen?
Sure. Well, I mean, what I always say is, you know, the decisions that are being made in Washington, the decisions that are being made in Lansing, I'm sorry, I'm not designing my future anymore, all right? I'm 57. And, you know, it will have some impact on what my next job will be, what my retirement will look like, and all of those kinds of things. But the decisions that are being made in Washington, you know, most of you in this room, you have the most to gain or the most to lose by those decisions. Okay? Again, are we creating an environment of economic opportunity where you guys, like I graduated during the years that are called the Carter malaise, well before most of you were born. But when I graduated and got my MBA from Michigan, the discussion wasn't about not getting a good job. It's kind of like, we're only going to have the opportunity to choose between 1 or 2 opportunities instead of 4 or 5. How many of you who are, my kids are 23, 26, and 29. Well, I can tell you, they ain't choosing between 5 or 6 different good opportunities out there for jobs. Way too many young people are going out, they're trying to find one good opportunity for a job in the field that they just spent $50, $75, or $100,000, you know, preparing. What's our relationship with China? Is our relationship with China one that provides you with more opportunity or provides you with less opportunity? You know, this is, you know, we're creating your future and what kinds of opportunity. Typically, that should be enough for you guys should be the ones in the streets protesting what's going on today because, you know, it's your future. It's your America. It's going to be your marketplace for the next 40 to 45 years when you're working from 40 to 65 to 70. Do you really think that adding $1 trillion worth of debt by this generation to you, not to me, okay? I've had my career. I had a great career. I had a great career at Herman Miller. I've had a great career at I've had my opportunity. But do you really believe that $1.5 trillion of new debt that you're going to be paying interest on for the next 45 years is going to create more opportunity or less opportunity for you? I believe it's going to create significantly less opportunity for you. And if you can't figure, be careful. I'll go ahead and, if you can't figure that out and get motivated, I don't know what I can say or do to get you to figure it out. Because to me, it's plain economics 101. Okay? How many of you like coming out of college with $100,000 student loans and think that that's going to create more economic opportunity to you? Is that going to make it easier for you to buy your first house or harder? That's what the country's doing. That's what's happening to you right now. The country's mortgaging your future each and every day by adding on trillions of dollars of debt that you are going to be responsible for. Just maybe, I've never thought through this analogy, it just kind of came here. But you know, it's kind of like what happens to you with your college debt. If you can come out of college with no debt, the economic opportunity for you when you go to work is going to be a whole lot greater than if for the first 10 years you've got to pay off $100,000 worth of debt. I would hope the trouble is generations prove over and over again. They don't figure that out until they're about 45 or 50.
How successful do you feel we've been in the Middle East?
If you take a look at the poll results, and it's always questionable how effective polling can be in the Middle East, where it's just hard to reach people and these kinds of things. But if you take a look at the sacrifice that we've made in Afghanistan, the sacrifice that we've made in Iraq, and these types of things, and then you see what I think the Arab Spring, my political cliche becomes the winner of our discontent. I don't think it's going to be a blossoming of freedom and democracy throughout the Middle East. I'm very nervous about that. It's clear that we have not significantly improved our image throughout the Middle East and throughout the Islamic world. I think we've had, the thing about, militarily we've had, getting bin Laden was a tactical success. Militarily, we have had all kinds of tactical successes over the last 10 years. But we are far from being able to say that we've had a strategic victory versus the threat that we face. That's why we talk about this threat being out there for an extended period of time, because until you get people on Main Street throughout the Middle East being more receptive to the United States, less receptive to radicalism, we will not have achieved the kind of success or security that we would like to have. I mean, this is another thing just to think about. It's something that I feel, and it's one of the things that after I left Congress, it's kind of like I wish I'd spent more time on it, focused on it. An indicator of whether we're being successful or not in transforming the Middle East should be what? From my perspective, it should be, is the Middle East more tolerant of other religions within their countries today after America has been there than what they were before? I don't think there's any way you can look at it but say that especially, Christians and Jews are facing higher levels of persecution throughout the Middle East than what they have, in a long time. Coptic Christians in Egypt, the Christians in Lebanon, the Chaldeans in Iraq. We go into the Christians in Afghanistan country. We get rid of Saddam Hussein. We allow for the development of a constitution that includes elements of Sharia and creates an environment that is hostile to Christians in Iraq. Christians in Iraq, it's one of the, it's a huge disappointment for me in terms of the plight of Christians throughout the Middle East and the plight of the Jewish people through many places in the Middle East.